All right, daily dose of mystical stuff. All right, okay, so the Zohar online. I just searched for Zohar online, came right up. All right, prologue, chapter one. The secret of spiritual protection is revealed through a richly metaphorical discourse given by Rabbi Chizkiah. The rabbi explains, and I shouldn't say Chizkiah, Hizkiah. The rabbi explains that the spiritual forces that protect and watch over us are called the 13 attributes of mercy. They're transmitted into our physical world through the first 13 words of Torah, or Torah, if that makes you feel better. All right, Torah, Torah. Okay. When the judgments are decreed against us, these 13 forces can safeguard us from their influence. We begin drawing this light of protection to ourselves at the very moment we begin to browse and behold the mystical shapes and sequences of the Aramaic text and to learn the spiritual insights presented there. Rabbi Chizkiah opened the discussion with the verse, as the rose among the thorns, Shir Hashirim Tutu, Song of Songs, folks. Might be better to look at this on Safari. Yeah. He asked, what is the rose? And he replies, it is the congregation of Israel, which is Malchut. Because there is a rose and there is a rose, just as the rose among the thorns is tinged with red and white, right? Now, linguistically, the first thing that happens in my mind, I have to be perfectly honest, when somebody says, "Well, you have a rose," and you have a rose, and this is the rose I'm talking about. There, all right. So maybe, there's a thing. Somebody said. Of his mother, he's a spy. Of his father, he's a spy. But of a spy, he's no spy. Right. So I guess, to me, what happens in my mind is like, really we see things in the world around us, but infinity is caught up in the finite, right? And we're all finite vessels. So we just see fragments of the divine infinite essence, right? So and I can't go into the rabbi's mind. I can't. Uh, but when he said that, and this is an English translation, I can't read Aramaic. I'm learning to read Hebrew, and but he said you have a rose, and then you have the rose of roses, or something like that. Something that encompasses the divine essence of it. And when it does that, if it's infinite, yeah, it does encompass the congregation of Israel. But you find these sort of, you could call them finite boundaries where uh, we see the finiteness of two different things and find a boundary or an overlap. Um, now, um, just as the rose among thorns is tinged with red and white, so is the congregation of Israel affected by the qualities of judgment and mercy. Just as the rose has 13 petals, so the congregation of Israel is surrounded by the 13 attributes of mercy. Thus, between the first mention of the name Elohim, which appears in the passage, in the beginning Elohim created, Bereshit 1:1. To the second mention of Elohim, there are 13 words in the verse, which translate as the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and a wind, Ibid 2. Okay. You know what? Yeah. There was a lady, she's screaming at me, right? Because I'm a math teacher. I had to get back on my own IXL, and I said, "Am I a competent English person?" And I did the IXL diagnostic, and it came back and it said, "You're done with IXL ELA. You got 1,300 in every domain for ELA." So there you go. But I'm perfect. I mean, I'm a human being, and I don't use IBIT all the time. I kind of, and I've known what it means, but I forgot. So I'm going to look it up. In the same source. Oh yeah, it came from the same place, right? So there's a previous reference to something, and then you go, I bet that. Right, okay. All right. And you just don't, yeah. In conversation, you never say, well, I bid too. Because actually, when you're in conversation, you don't put a superscript. All right. All right. These words surround and guard the congregation of Israel. After this, the name Elohim is mentioned. Oh, what's that? These words surround and guard the congregation of Israel. Yeah, I should bear that in mind. And there's Israel and Israel. Now, um, I know some people are not Jewish, and they like. Here's an example. The Pew Research did a study to find out what kind of people in the world know less about religion than anybody else. And it turned out that Catholics won, that they were just rock bottom in any knowledge about religion. And of course, the Bible and Judaism, yeah, it's a culture and it's a religion. So you may not, if you're watching this and you're a Christian, you may not know anything about the Bible. That's very common. Um, so what was I talking about? I was gonna tell you about Israel. So if you remember the story, there's a passage where Jacob crosses a river and brings all his livestock across. All right. If I remember correctly, and do correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, can people chat? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me in the chat. But if you just read the Bible, it says, well, you know, he brought his stuff across the river, and then he got in a wrestling match, and it went on all night. And the guy that was wrestling him couldn't beat him, so finally he pulled out some hoodoo mojo. He touched him on his hip socket, and his hip went out of joint. I mean, he just, I think he just radiated or so. Yeah, I think it says he touched him, and his hip came out of joint. And he still, he hung on to him. He says, "Well, it's daybreak. I've got to go." He says, "Well, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." So he blesses them, and he says, "From now on, you're going to be called Israel," which means those that contend with God and prevail, right? Yeah, and so, in the sense, you could say there's a rose and there's a rose, right? And people can lament me about this. You could say there's Israel, but there's also Israel in the same way, the infinite divine essence of those that never stop asking questions and wrestle with God, right? So that's, if you want to get into a connection, an interesting connection to this, and what I'm trying to put across to you at this time, to this and Kabbalah, you can look at how Freud was, for reasons he had, might be able to find them written down somewhere, but he had reasons he didn't like to use hypnosis for psychoanalysis, right? So it's too unreliable, but he came up with this thing, well, I'll just say words and I'll look at your response to just, what's the first, I'm going to say a word, first thing comes into your mind, tell me. And after doing that with a bunch of words, and you're all relaxed, you're laying down on the couch, kind of semi-dream-like state, right? And he's saying these words. He's like looking at the first thing that comes to your mind, right? And it's a way of showing that a word can be the tip of an iceberg. A word can be a trigger. Has nothing to do with the denotative, the meaning that's in the dictionary. What edition of the dictionary, we don't know. But just to clearly elaborate on this idea, Here's something, if you're a teacher, you can do with a group or something like that to show that we don't necessarily understand what we're saying to each other at all because we don't at the level of the unit of words. So, the way it works is you get a little strip of paper and everybody's anonymous. They write whatever they want, and you open up a dictionary and you look away and the leader of the test, or it could be one of the participants or whatever, they move their finger around on the page, page at random, word at random. They look down, they get the word, and then they just say it. And if you do this, sometimes if you just do it with 3 words, if you're really in a hurry, you don't necessarily hit a nerve with anyone, right? So 5 is good, and really the more the better, right? Somebody should make an online web page of this, and you can steal the idea from me. Maybe somebody's already come up with the idea. I don't know if they have or not, but the exercise goes like this. Choose 3 words at random, at the case of 3, 5, whatever you want, for the group that you're doing it with. And everybody has instructions already in front of them. So before you start, they look at the instructions and it says, when the word comes out of the person's mouth, the random word, think of the first thing that comes into your mind. And if it's an image, then write down what you saw, what you visualized, right? And I'll give you an example of this. I was doing this one time and somebody said, stop. That was the word, right? So, now and later. I don't know. Now and later candy. Right? Right? This is like, let's see if we can find. This is, let's see, original logo, what we want. This sort of looks like the original kind of logo or something like that. But yeah, there it is. Okay, so these 2 kids, right, smiling or whatever, it's like when the person randomly touched that word and said stop, right, is a word, the image of these 2 kids flashed into my mind, right? That was the first thing that came to my mind. Now, why is that? Well, okay, I thought about it, and I'm not sure why that is. But when I was a little kid, and I would walk down the block, there was a little convenience store, and it was called Stop and Go, right? And that was one of the things that we got there. We got these watermelon flavor candies, or some kind of chewing gum or something like that, and I said, the now and later candy, and nobody said that but me, right? So that's an example. Everybody had different things, but if you say, then what you do in the test is you write down everybody writes down what they think the denotative meaning is of the word, the denotative meaning of stop, right? To cease to move, to stop, what are synonyms for stop? Desist. Let's look that up, because synonyms. Come to an end, conclude, terminate, break off, pause, right? Shut up. It could be that, right? But this demonstrates you can get the word itself is like in another person's mind when they hear it and it comes in through their ear. It's the tip of an iceberg. No telling what kind of things can come up. Of an event, cause, cessation, right? Right? Who? Nobody. When we had nobody said a cessation, right? Uh, nobody said an act to cause an action or process to come to an end. Nobody, right? And but then in the test, the next word was home. Well, no, it wasn't. It was yeah, it was home. It was home. Okay, I was wrong. All right, now home. We're going around and people. Let's see, home definition. And this is the when you do this, you're getting what the dictionary said, the denotative meaning of home, right? A place where one lives permanently, especially as a member of a family or a household, relating to the place where one lives, the plate, home plate, or something like that. So even the denotative meaning, nobody said this. People were like place of residence, domicile, crib, right? What does it say in the dictionary? Well, it says a lot of stuff in the dictionary. It could be an adjective, it could be an adverb, it could be a verb, right? So when that word comes out and it happens in a conversation, people look at the context and they go, well, he means home in this kind of way. But nevertheless, it could mean a lot of different things, and it goes on and on and on. And there could be all the different ways it could be said in a different language, meaning all these different kind of things. And this is the mystery of the rose and the rose. There's Israel and there's Israel, right? One, that's a divine essence of the thing, right? Which must be infinite, beyond human since we're finite, we gotta stay on stuff that in some kind of way is valid in many ways as possible. So what I'm showing by this exercise is that when people are communicating with each other, really you don't know what's going on, and even the person doesn't know. So we're going down through home, and all of a sudden this guy's like almost in tears. I don't have a home. I've been divorced. I've been estranged from my wife, living in the house on the opposite side of the house for years, and I have no home. I signed a prenuptial agreement, and now I'm living in my mom's basement at 55 or something. And it's like he's about to fall off the chair. Just you said home, and it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, very sad, right? And it reminded me. I'm immediately reminded of Ed Wood. There's a book about Ed Wood. He's considered the worst. They call him the worst movie director of all time. But let's be fair to the man, folks. I mean, the thing about Ed Wood's movie, a lot of people made movies like Ed Wood was making. It was just past the time. People were, everybody had seen that kind of thing, and it wasn't. It was sort of like it was at the point where it was like, and then along came Jones, and everybody's saying, has this broadcaster gone insane? Absolutely insane, right? And why are they saying that? Because they're like, what is it? Along came Jones. What is that? Okay, it's a song by the Coasters that expresses jadeness over. We don't get any suspense from the story that you're telling anymore because everybody's using the same story, no matter what channel we tune into. Right. So back to Ed Wood, and the book about his life was made into a movie. I think it's a Tim Burton movie. Definitely a must see. It actually talks about Lugosi, Bela Lugosi, Dracula. I want to drink your blood towards the end of his life, but Ed Wood wrote a script, a couple of script lines where. The scientists of Bela Lugosi's character, the mad scientists, they come to find him in the jungle, and they're like, we discovered that you were right, and we shouldn't have persecuted you and sent you away, and that's why I've come to bring you home. This is what Ed Wood wrote. And Bela Lugosi's response is, home, I have no home. Hunted, despised, living like an animal. The jungle is my home, but I shall show the world that I can be its master. I shall create my own race, a race of atomic supermen that will conquer the world. Yeah, he's just lost completely. Yeah, but that's profound, and to me, especially in the sense of illustrating that words mean different things, infinitely different many things to different people. So communication is very complex, and people think that they understand each other. I mean, they can be living in the same house for years and talking to each other, and not and have ideas about what it means. Now, I'm a multicultural person. I'm mixed Irish Jewish, but I have a lot of really I don't know, but at least from my maternal grandmother's branch of the family is really all I know about, right? And there's no doubt that I mean she was from the Aran I well I mean her line was from the Aran Islands, um, and that's just you can't get more Irish than that you would think, but actually when the DNA came back, it was mostly Viking DNA. Wonder how that happened. More than Irish, yeah. Which is yeah, that will turn. But as far as my European DNA, I've got a lot of South Slavic Jewish, uh, Central European Jewish, and Hispanic Jewish, and Italian and German. And it says that based on the information we have now in my DNA, that it's mostly northwestern Europe, right? And for some reason, I find that I've had a lot of very close relationships over the course of my life with South Slavic people, and Italian people, and German people, right? Just exactly the people that I click with. Jewish people. Also, my sister converted to Judaism when I was very young, and I was brought up in a secular Jewish household. My sister's husband, um, was just like a Polish Jew whose family had really lost. They had been very poor. They had lost everything. They were like, "Look, this time it's not going to blow over. This Nazi thing, we got to go." And a lot of their family, were well off and they were doing well, and they were like, "Oh, it'll pass. These things blow over. It always happens to us." And they stayed, and then his family escaped, right? But they were not rich, not super rich people, and yeah, and family members that were staying with him, he grew up. It was normal for him to live with us in the house because we lived at very close quarters. He said, they were living when they came to America. They lived with two families in a one bedroom house, like with two rooms or whatever. And yeah. So for some reason, I at least I really clicked with him. Now I've got indication in my DNA that well, the names of certain family members have a lot of Welsh, and interestingly, not much Welsh DNA. Right. Papa's baby, or no, Mama's baby, Papa's maybe. All right. So, and it's interesting, like reflecting on stuff like what is that guy that um, Ned Kelly, you know, think about that for a minute. I hope I'm not being too Finnegan's wakiness with you, but it's interesting to note that if you really explore your whole life, and I'm getting older, if you explore your entire life, and you look at the connections that you made, well, I just instantly clicked with Norwegians. I instantly clicked with um, uh, Danish people, Norwegians, Danish, Jewish people, um, Polish people, South Slav, basically. Really had a lot of very close relationships with Bosnians until our country decided to bomb them, and then that ruined a lot of my relationships here because I was working with refugees here. But I really clicked with them. And then ultimately my DNA said, you got a lot of DNA shared with this particular ethnic group. And you look at the people that you click with, I have not clicked with Scottish people. I'm supposed to have a lot of Scottish DNA. Uh, but across the board, where I have significant European DNA, well, one factor is the Scottish DNA shows up more closer in my history, not in any of the names, or well, I should say, my legal name changes to Schwartzinger, and there's a long story behind that that I'll tell you about at some time. But the name McBride, my mother married. Well, this man, it turns out, he my mother had a bunch of kids. She had 4 kids and a dangerous alcoholic veteran husband that she had to divorce. Right? It's okay. Happened to a lot of people. We're not the only ones who had it happen to them. Well, she had. Why did she have to divorce him? Well, he just came back from the military dangerous. He never got back to normal. And my sister, God rest her soul, she's got a place in the world to come. She does, But yeah, my mother's first husband, they had to get a divorce because, the straw that broke the camel's back is that my sister was asleep in the house. He came home drunk and he had heard from somebody else that Donna had worn pants. Donna was starting to show her figure, right, as a young child, and he had warned her that she's supposed to wear, a certain kind of girls' 1950s clothes or whatever like that, a skirt and everything like that. And he heard that she violated that and wore pants, but she didn't wear them out. She mom had her cleaning house, and they were scrubbing the floor and stuff, and it's a mess to try to scrub the floor in a dress, right? But he came home drunk, and the story that I got from her, and she's gone now, so I can't have it exactly again, or she can't give more details, was that he dragged her by her hair out into the hallway and beat her up very bad for doing that. And that was for my mom, when I discussed that with her, and she said that was a point. Well, what she told me is that he became a danger to my children, his children, right? Like she was afraid what he might do to the kids. She was trying to hang on and trying to stay with him. But he, after he was highly decorated in the Pacific, not the Pacific Theater, and the European Theater in World War II, and infantry, right? He came back and he wasn't, functioning very well, and so he re-enlisted and went back to the Korean War. And my family, my first 2 sisters, they all had to move it was before my third sister came. They had to move for the Korean War over to the Philippines. And I married a Filipino. There's more to it than that. But that's why my mother was divorced. And a man came up to my mother at a Civitan meeting or something. And she's like, I'm struggling. I'm trying to make ends meet and doing it on my own and stuff. And he's like, well, we could get together, partner, and do a door-to-door sales business. What you do is you drive, through neighborhoods, and you knock on doors and you go, hey, we got a case. And people actually, feel more comfortable. If it's just a man goes, it looks better, just a man. Looks better if there's a man and a woman together. People are more trusting or whatever like that. Not me. But anyway, she went with him to do that, and she said that she drove him to a remote area and raped her, and she was pregnant. And back then, there was no abortion. If you had a baby, you've got pregnant, you had to have the baby, right? So she said, well, you raped me. You're going to have to be responsible, and we're going to have to get married. And he's like, well, I'll clean my act up. Sure, we'll get married. But then he also was a danger to the children. Okay. So my name, McBride, comes from him. There's no blood relation between me and somebody named McBride. He's a guy that raped my mother. And my mother did not reveal to him when she got pregnant again after the rape baby. She was already separated from my father, but he assaulted her again sexually, and she was already pregnant with me. So he thought I was his baby because he knew he raped her again. And he unfortunately, he probably raped my brother. I'm not sure. So mother, her entire life, she didn't want me to know that I was not McBride. She wanted me to feel like I was legitimate and could get married in a normal kind of way. And also she wanted to protect me. Because if he, she realized, seeing what he did to other children. Isn't that horrible? But don't worry about me, right? I feel pretty good and I feel pretty happy. And one of the reasons I was on that Harvard positive psychology course is I am capable of saying, yeah, this is what happened, and it was really, really horrible and stuff. Whereas it's problematic. We've discovered there's a Harvard positive psychology course that presented a lot of data that said people that ruminate over stuff, bad things that happen, and never tell anybody about it, their well-being is worse off for it. So, yeah, I think that's really true. I have better well-being. A lot of the veterans, I think, and I know, for example, my mother's first husband, she was not, or he was not. I'm sorry. He was not able to talk about it. To the best of my knowledge, he didn't talk about what happened in the war. And you need to, really, really terrible things happen. If you want to get over it, you need to talk about it. All right, so back to Zohar. So now, today, on our Zohar lesson, right, we learned that words mean different things to different people. And just like that, words that are mystically or divinely inspired may have words, right? And some in different religions, people say, well, there are muses, the caritas, right? These feminine deities that they're the inspiration of all poets, for example, or musicians, right? And so the sound of music can mean different things to different people. So Hebrew, and Aramaic can mean a lot of different things. And for more than 1,000 years, for example, right here, we're doing a little bit of mystical study here, Kabbalah, right? There is controversy about the antiquity of Kabbalah and this kind of mysticism. And there are cases where it seems, in all likelihood, that materials that we have thought were very ancient because they were provided by a rabbi or something that said, well, I got the materials provided, I got it from an ancient manuscript. I think the story goes that a particular rabbi was doing that, and after he passed away, they went looking for his wife, and she said, well, he told me that he just wrote that stuff himself, and I saw him writing it. Apparently she said that, and they were like, people, it became a big controversy because they were like, well, she was scared, right? And that's why she said that, right? They could not believe that it was not ancient because of various reasons, scholarly reasons. So that debate rages till today. But having said that, I think this is already 1,000 or at least 600 years ago that a lot of new Kabbalistic material came into human knowledge, right? Or at least to Kabbalists, they knew about it. And the very theory that I'm trying to present to you, the linguistic theory behind Kabbalah, this whole thing of like words have, you have a rose and you have a rose. Now I made an interpretation of that. I said, what does that mean? Well, there's a divine essence of the rose that goes on forever, and it's infinite, and that is its union with God, and therefore it encompasses Israel. But as human and finite vessels, we can only comprehend something that I hesitate to call a boundary. But in this Kabbalistic text, what do I mean when I say this? So let's return to the text now, and I hope that that's not too much for you. All right, so I'm just gonna, since we talk so much, just of basic things that can give you an idea of how so many people could study the Kabbalah, and how so many years this has gone on. Newton studied this, and I don't think that we've studied what he studied, because a lot of people were pissed off. They were like, "This is banana oil. He's a great, brilliant mind. He shouldn't have been studying this." It's hooey or something like that. So that, to the best of my knowledge, his study of numerology and stuff, people lament that he did that, Isaac Newton. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top of this passage too. After this, the name Elohim is mentioned another time in the passage. Elohim moved over Ibid, the previous, over the water, the stuff that was out without form and void, right? And why is it mentioned again? In order to bring out the 5 rigid leaves that surround the rose. And these 5 leaves represent the 5 gates of salvation. Now, but, having said that, people say, and you may get this from Buddhism, as soon as you put anything into words about God and divinity, that's not it, right? Because of this thing of, we, with finite consciousness, existence, and essence, and so on, we can't, we are a finite vessel, and we can't contain the full purity of the divine essence. But the more that we do, the more amazing our lives can be. All right, so and these 5 leaves represent the 5 gates of salvation, right? So what's been drawn here is like, with all these words that we're getting into the passage, we go, well, what other concept or thing has this number and linked to it, right? And, some people will get mad and they'll go, well, that's just random stuff. Well, it might be, it might not be, right? If you create a structure like in the period when the Zohar was created, if you create these coordinates, right, and then develop very carefully along the coordinate base system that you've created, you can get to very deep concepts. And a lot of Kabbalists there's lots and lots of stories about people that were experts in Kabbalah that saw, they had second sight, or they somebody came to them and it's like, this terrible thing is going to happen, and they looked forward and they said, no, it's not. This person is not dead. And that there's stories about these people. Our son, he's been missing, and the rabbi goes, he's in this village, and they go to the village and they wait, and they can't find him, right? And they come back and the rabbi's there, and they go, no, we were there, he wasn't there. And the rabbi goes, the wheel of his cart broke, and he was doing something related to that. That's where he was. And then their son comes back, and he's like, yeah, I had to stop there. I got delayed there because the wheel was broken or something like that. Everybody was, you know, lo and behold, right? So, okay, a caveat on Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, master of the good name. There's so many stories like that, right? And he's a Kabbalist, right? So he's supposed to be able to, it's sort of, think of prophetic stuff where prophets in the Bible. Many Jews believe that it's our Torah that makes it possible for us to be prophets, right? And if you don't have Torah, you can't achieve the ability really to be a prophet. Okay, so this idea has been handed down for. So about the Baal Shem Tov, there's a lot of stories about him, seeing something in the future or something at a distance, realizing, and what can we say about that? Well, people say that's banana oil. That's a lot of superstition. You're crazy if you believe that. Well, about Baal Shem Tov miracle stories, a very famous thing was said. And I can't remember right off the top of my head who said it, but they said this. They said, anyone who believes every miracle story ever told of the Baal Shem Tov is a fool. It's crazy, right? Okay. But the same person that said that said, but anyone that really believes that it was impossible for him to do those things, is a heretic, right? And I encourage you, if you're beginning to embark on study of mysticism, to think deeply about even simple phrases and the different things that they can mean. All right, so 5 gates of salvation. And this secret is written about in the verse. I will raise the cup of salvation. Tehillim 116.13 or colon 13 or Telahim, I guess that's chapter 116, verse 13. This is the cup of benediction that is raised after the meal. Okay, so yeah, if you read in the Talmud, right, there's a lot of things that we're supposed to do to remind us that there's only, I mean, for us or for some Jewish people, we do these things as a way of trying to remember that try not to forget our God, trying to remember our God is for us the only true God, and that we have received something from that God and made a commitment that we're going to follow it. Truth, justice, and mercy, right? So people say all this stuff about the Nazis and the anti-Semites and the Jews want. No, the Jews. There might be Jews that want to do anything, right? But as as far as the Jewish religion as we have it today and in history, 99% is you should read it because they're trying to do. They have all these ideas about how to be obedient to God, but they have this idea of a real God. And that there's only one real one, that the other ones are all pretend gods. And the real one is what we're trying to get to. And he's the one that created everything, so he understands all the laws of the universe, right? And, Jewish people will take note that we don't understand those laws, and we better try to find out, or we're going to be destroyed. All right, so. The cup of benediction, right? See, he's drawing all these connections. Must rest on 5 fingers. Now, does that mean I have to do this? Some rabbis would say, yeah, you have to touch it with another finger. You got to have a total of 5 to rest your cup. Some people, no, 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 no. It just means your hand, and the thumb is considered classified in this context as a finger. Some people are going to argue about that, what means that or not. Okay, but as the cup of benediction must rest on 5 fingers and no more, just as the rose rests on 5 rigid leaves that represent the 5 fingers. So the he's saying the rose represents 5 fingers. Now you're looking at the rose, dying in the vase on your table, right? You're going banana oil. But I ask you to bear with me for just a second and think back to the concept of the rose and the rose among thorns. If you just took it on the surface in the Song of Songs, it's a beautiful black woman, right? Because that's literally what the text says. The woman says, I'm black, and people look down on me, and I'm black, and she's a rose among thorns, or whatever. Is that what it means? Well, but go back to the beginning of this lesson, right? And the idea that I presented to you about there's a rose and there's a rose. The divine essence of the rose is Israel. How can that be? Well, we are a finite vessel, so any object, we don't see the infinite connection, right? So if it's infinite, right, it encompasses everything. Yeah. Also, including a beautiful black woman who was in love with Solomon, according to Song of Songs, right? In the text, that's what the text says. So you have to hang on to that as you begin to study the mysticism of the Zohar. If you lose that, you're just sitting there. Words are going by, and you're not getting the benefit of it. So allow your mind to expand. Your Kabbalah. Can you imagine a practice, a mental practice, where you can expand your consciousness, right? Which, if you go from the understanding, we in our tradition, especially this time of year, they're saying, well. For a Jewish person, they talk about Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, and God said, everything's, you guys are just hunky-dory here as long as you don't eat from the tree of knowledge. And a lesser creation, an animal creation, God had said, this is my top one, right? Don't want them to eat of that tree of knowledge. If they do, they're going to die, right? And in a sense, die. You can die in many ways, right? like me dying in where was I dying yesterday? I was dying in Valorant yesterday, right? There's dying and there's dying, just like there's a rose and there's a rose. The infinity of it encompasses all things, and what we're doing is we're threading this network as a part of a mental exercise to expand our consciousness, right? So here we go. This rose is the cup of benediction. And yeah, I am saying anything can be anything. But if you do that, you're not going to get any value out of this. You might as well stop and go do something else, right? Because, well, you would say, you can't, well, in the tradition, we say humility is the beginning of wisdom. And when you say, this is a lot of banana oil, well, there's more to it than that. It means a lot to a lot of people. And people, it's been preserved for hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of years. And people still practice it. And a lot of them are very, successful people. And, they don't do it for nothing, right? So think about that for a second. In terms of humility is the beginning of wisdom, right? Let's go back. It's, I will raise the cup of salvation, Tehillim 116:13, right? This is the cup of benediction that is raised after the meal. The cup of benediction must rest on 5 fingers and no more, just as the rose rests on the 5 rigid leaves that represent the 5 fingers. And this rose is the cup of benediction. From the second to the third mention of the name Elohim, there are 5 words which translate as moved over the surface of the waters and said. These words parallel the 5 leaves. From this point, the verse continues. Elohim said, "Let there be light." Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 3. Check me if I'm wrong. Okay. After this light was created, it was concealed and enclosed within the covenant that entered the rose and fructified it. This is referred to as a fruit tree yielding fruit, whose seed is in itself. Now, you need to think deeply about this. And this seed is the bread. All right. So that's going to bring us to the, what is the bread? Think about that, right? So you can't just dismiss this stuff. As soon as you see wrong stuff, it allows you to, well, one of the direct benefits is that it allows you to connect yourself in new ways to all these ancient manuscripts and their connection to human history and human civilization, right? So join me on my journey, and we'll see you next time on the next thrilling installment of the chapter of The Thing, the reading cow from another world. Until then, it's not going to be then. So see you next time, folks.